Welcome back as we broach a very exciting conversation for me. I think you can see I'm bubbling under this morning. We're about to unlock the secrets of motivation and goal setting, realistic goal setting, with one of our favorites, Gilan Gork, an accomplished mentalist and a coach. And he's here to reveal the keys to staying inspired and crushing our goals in 2024. Don't we like the sound of that?
Oh, yeah.
Buddy, I love the way you're just nodding your head emphatically like you've got this down. And I think that's where it starts, with a reflection of self and a self-motivation. It's one thing for us to be able to plug into mates of ours who make us feel good. It's another thing starting that journey with ourselves. So where does that journey start with you? Because there's added pressure. You've got to be that source of energy and positivity for other people. So what gets you up in the morning, bud?
Sure. What gets me up in the morning, I suppose, is just keeping in mind my vision and having that vision encompass everyone else who I'm serving. I think that our highest motivation comes when we're doing something that's bigger than just ourselves.
Yeah,
and that can be in any kind of context, whether you're a parent, whether you're at work, if you're a leader, no matter what your job is, if you are cognizant of the chain of people who it's going to impact, you can really infuse what you do with a lot of purpose.
And then the joy is you get to see it coming back to you. You get to see whether it's just a positive thought in the morning spread throughout your workspace or your family. You get to feel that coming back to you, which is a very beautiful and a powerful thing. What I love about the space that you've chosen to work in is it's quite practical. So it's often we'll call it magic because it just feels like that. When we drift into the mentalist space, you're doing things that few of us can fully understand, but we can kind of feel it. But these are practical ways of being able to motivate yourself, keep yourself moving. So plug us into that. What should a day look like for us? When we start the day, how do we get our mind dialed in?
Right. And I mean, you mentioned the fact that I'm a mentalist, and, basically I'm passionate about how we use our minds, what's happening in people's minds, even when they don't realize what's happening. So it's really worthwhile to acknowledge that there's a lot that's happening in our own minds that we're unaware of that is impacting what we end up doing. Because when you talk about motivation, really, what does that look like in a physical sense is us doing the things we said we're going to do when we said we're going to do them.
It's realizing that potential.
Exactly, that self-actualization that plays out in all of our actions and behaviors and decisions. So at the start of every day, it's instead of just getting up and starting to just do, because usually we don't realize that our brains in evolutionary sense is hardwired for survival. So we often wake up in that survival kind of mode, and it's really worthwhile to wake up and think to yourself, right, hold on, how am I seeing things? How do I see myself? How do I see other people? How do I see the world? Because how we see things, the stories we tell ourselves, will impact how we feel, and how we feel will impact what we do.
That's the lens, and that's the way it works. I think we often think it's the other way around. We wait for life to happen to us, then we think about it, then we feel, not realizing that if you start with that feeling, then everything can turn around.
Yep.
That's great on a great day. It's like when I've got a lovely day ahead of me, when nothing is terrifying me, nothing is crushing me back into my bed because the pressure is so hectic and I don't know how I'm going to do it. How do we get out of those tough days? How do we get through or just get ourselves out of bed on those tough days? How do you shift the negative into a positive?
Oh, that's a great question. Firstly, what I've just described, yes, of course, everything is easier when the world has lined up just the way to make you feel good. And what you're asking, it sounds like, is, well, when you're not feeling good, how do you change that feeling?
Yes.
So that we can think, behave, react more effectively. And so how do we change how we feel? Well, it's, again, the same thing. We just change how we see things, and it will change how we feel. So I always ask myself, well, how am I seeing? Firstly, how am I feeling right now? And then the second thing I ask myself is, how am I seeing things? And by things, I mean either myself or the situation I'm in, or other people,
your dynamic,
the world. How am I seeing things that's making me feel this way? And the moment I say to myself, well, if I knew this and I put in a different way of seeing things, how would I then feel? So it's really about becoming aware of, this is where mindfulness plays a part, becoming aware of how I feel and what the story is that's driving that feeling. And that's especially important when we're having an off day.
And that gives you the mechanism, because then you know, okay, well, that worked for me yesterday. All I needed to do was, instead of complaining, I just needed to be grateful for 5 minutes. And that's a different lens. As opposed to looking at what you don't have, start with what you have. Just that little shift in your mind, I get that. And I think where it comes to bear for me, and looking at the shape that you're in this year, I'm guessing the movement is good. But if you run today And then tomorrow you get up and you run just a little bit further. Your brain registers that success. Those small victories can often mean so much. Why is it important to revel in that, or to applaud yourself and celebrate those small victories, especially when there is so much challenge around you? Why is that important, do you think?
Well, there's two reasons, or probably more than two, but I'll give two reasons. Firstly, it feels great to be able to, to celebrate those small wins, and so success breeds success.
Exactly.
That's the high-level answer. Something for fellow nerds out there. I'm a huge neuroscience nerd, and our brains, like I mentioned right at the start of our chat, we're wired for survival, and so in evolutionary terms, our brains have become very good at picking up negative things that we can identify and go like, hold on. That's potential danger, right? Because that's kept us alive.
That's one of our superpowers, in fact, and it's turned into anxiety.
Exactly. Because, in evolutionary terms, if I managed to notice something that was good, maybe I'd get a nice, pleasurable thing. But if I didn't notice something that was bad, I might die, right? And so obviously our brains have that negativity bias. So when we recognize small wins and small victories, what we're also doing is we're releasing dopamine. And our brain wants to do more things where we feel dopamine. And you're kind of counterbalancing that negativity bias by training your brain to actually seek out the things that had dopamine related to it. So when you've done something hard and you say to yourself while you're doing it, I'm enjoying this because I enjoy doing hard things.
I know what's coming out, yeah.
Exactly. Sometimes we're doing hard things, like maybe exercise, like you mentioned, and we're telling ourselves, oh man, this is so easy. But actually, science shows it's more effective to say, you know what, this is tough, but I enjoy doing tough things, and I'm enjoying doing this because of the results I'm going to get. And you actually release dopamine that way, which brings your brain to actually want to do that stuff more in the future.
And you try this with your kids. They've got the most malleable little brains, or big brains in the case of my kids, I often feel. But it's amazing the reward you get when you can make that shift. Just change the lens that you're looking at life through. It makes a massive difference. I always worry after I've chatted with you, maybe at some point I was acting like a chipmunk or doing something that you mentally suggested to me. I feel like normal. I feel like everything went great. You're amazing at what you do. Thank you so much for propagating this at the level that you do, because I know you influence a lot of change makers, a lot of the thinkers out there that are guiding and doing so much for the rest of us. So thank you. If you have more questions that you'd like to ask Ilan, you can hit us up on our social media platforms. We'll ask him if he can stick around and give us a few tips online as well. But if there are ways that you motivate yourself, these little hacks that get your positivity pumping, we'd love to hear from you. 063 408 8863. Drop us a voice note. We'd love to chat to you this morning.